The food was still on the table. Turkey, stuffing, the cranberry sauce Emily had made the year before, and that I'd made again from her recipe because the grandchildren expected it. My grandchildren. My house. My table. Kendra reached into her purse and placed a document in front of me, and then she said 7 words, and I want you to notice that she didn't ask. She didn't say, "Would you consider?" or "when you have a moment." She said, "Just sign it before things get complicated." I looked at the paper, then I looked at my son. Jason was sitting right next to her, and he was looking at the tablecloth. I stood up. I folded my napkin. I put it next to my plate, and I walked out of my own house. Welcome to real-life verdict. Get comfortable. The people in this story had every chance to behave themselves, they just chose wrong. Drop a comment, hit that like button, and make sure you're subscribed. Let me back up. My name is Leonard. I'm 64 years old. I worked 38 years as a union electrician for the city, municipal buildings, the water treatment plant, whatever needed doing. I retired last year with a pension and health benefits and a Craftsman toolbox from 1987 with a duct-taped handle that still rides in the back of my truck and goes to every job site because there is nothing wrong with it. Margaret and I bought the ranch house in 1981. Same year we bought the lake property. 40 acres up north, 800 feet of shoreline. A 2-bedroom cabin we built out ourselves over 3 summers. We paid $32,000 for it. We planted a garden on the east side. We took both kids up there every July until the kids stopped coming every July, the way kids do. Margaret died in 2016. Ovarian cancer. It was 8 months from diagnosis to the end, and I was with her for all of it. After that, I learned to cook. I kept the house. I kept the garden at the lake. I kept showing up. For the grandchildren's birthdays, for school events, for Sunday dinners. I am not going to tell you I handled grief well. I am going to tell you I kept showing up, because that was the only thing I knew how to do that mattered. My son Jason lives here in town. He's 36. He still wears a high school basketball tournament shirt under his work flannel, the same one from senior year, and I have never once mentioned it because it is none of my business what a grown man wears under his jacket. His wife Kendra has been in the family for 9 years. Kendra is efficient. That is the word I would have used back when I thought efficiency was a compliment in a person. She runs a household. She tracks things. She has opinions about property values and tax timing and planning ahead, and she shares them at dinner tables because she has decided they are worth sharing. There is one thing I noticed early and never said anything about. At every family dinner, my house, their house, it didn't matter. Kendra would finish eating and stand up from the table before the plates were cleared. She'd walk to the living room. Jason would handle her dishes. Or I would. I never said anything. I noticed. November 18th, 2023, 5 days before Thanksgiving. I stopped by Jason and Kendra's house to drop off a birthday gift for my younger grandson. I was on the porch for maybe 4 minutes. Kendra came out and mentioned, the way you mentioned the weather, that she and Jason had been talking to someone about property transfers. She said it would be easier to do it now than later. She smiled when she said it. Not a warm smile, an efficient one. I drove home. I sat in my truck in the driveway for a few minutes. Then I went inside and found a phone number I hadn't used in 2 years. 3 days later, November 21st, 2 days before Thanksgiving, I sat in my attorney's office on Millbrook Road. I had received something in the mail the week before, an unsigned quitclaim deed for the lake property. Kendra had included a handwritten note saying, "We can do this at Thanksgiving." I placed the deed on the attorney's desk. He picked it up. He read it. He set it down. He looked at me, and then he explained something to me that I want to be careful about telling you, because this is the part everything else in this story depends on, and I'm not ready to tell you yet. What I will tell you is that when I left his office that afternoon, I understood something with complete certainty that I had only suspected before. I drove home. I put the deed in a folder. I put the folder in the drawer in my desk, and I went and started making the cranberry sauce. Thanksgiving morning. I was up at 5:45, made coffee, prepped the turkey. My daughter Emily arrived from out of state at noon with her family. The house smelled like it was supposed to smell. The grandchildren ran through the hallways. Everything looked like it always had. Jason and Kendra arrived at 2:00. We ate. We talked. The grandchildren knocked over a water glass and we laughed about it. Jason ate 2 helpings of everything, and I let him because I knew what was coming and I wanted him to have the meal first. Then dessert was on the table, and Kendra reached into her purse. She placed the quitclaim deed in front of me. The same one she'd mailed. The one I'd taken to the attorney. She said, "Just sign it before things get complicated." I looked at Jason. Jason looked at the tablecloth. I did not raise my voice. I did not explain. I did not ask Kendra what she meant, or tell her what I knew. I want you to understand something about me. I worked 38 years in buildings and plants where losing your calm could mean someone got hurt. You learn that stillness is not the same as inaction. You learn to put the tool down, step back, and think before you touch anything live. That habit doesn't leave you. I folded my napkin. I placed it on the table. I stood up and walked out of my own house on Thanksgiving, leaving a folder in my desk drawer that Kendra had no idea existed. The deed was already worthless. It had been worthless since 2009. She just didn't know that yet. The Sunday after Thanksgiving, Phil Carpenter called me. Phil's 68. He volunteers alongside me at the Habitat Builds. He's the one who keeps a laminated photo of his grandkids in the sunshade of his truck and taps it before he drives anywhere, every single time, without fail. He hadn't heard what happened. I hadn't told anyone yet except Emily, and only because she'd been in the room. Phil just called to check on me. He said, "I've got the truck. I'll help you move whatever you want moved." That was it. No questions, no conditions. He didn't need to know why. He had the truck, and he was offering it. I told him I didn't need to move anything, but I kept the call in mind. That is what it looks like when someone is actually on your side. Jason called 11 times in the first 2 weeks. Kendra called 4 times. I let them go to voicemail. I was not deciding what to do. I had already decided before I sat down to Thanksgiving dinner. I was simply giving them time to understand that I wasn't going to call back. There is a difference between silence as confusion and silence as an answer. I was giving them the answer. They just weren't reading it yet. If you've been here before, you know I don't tell these stories to get ahead of myself. I want you to stay with me here, because what I'm about to walk you through is the part that changed how I understood the last 9 years. Not just what happened at that Thanksgiving table, but everything that led to it, one step at a time, and the way each step looked perfectly reasonable until you put them all in a line. Before I do that, if this story is making you think about something in your own life, something where you kept giving someone the benefit of the doubt when maybe you shouldn't have, drop a comment below. You are not alone in that. Hit subscribe if you want to see how this ends, and stick with me because we're not there yet. Let's keep going. It started with the check. November 2018. Closing office. Jason and Kendra needed $18,000 for the down payment on their house. I wrote the check. Kendra thanked me and said they'd pay me back within 2 years. 2 years came and went. I never brought it up. They never brought it up. At the time, I told myself that was fine. Margaret would have said the same thing I said, which was nothing, because they needed it and we had it, and that is what family does. But I noticed. And I filed it away in the way I file things. Not with anger, just with accuracy. The way I'd mark a panel that wasn't right yet, but hadn't failed. Just noting the condition. Noting the date. Christmas 2019. Jason and I were drinking coffee after dinner, and he asked if I had a plan for the lake property. He said it casually, the way Kendra says things, like he was asking about the weather. I told him that Margaret and I had set things up years ago, and it was handled. He nodded, didn't press. I turned that over for a while. A man doesn't ask about his father's property plan unless someone put the idea in his head. I wondered if I was seeing something that wasn't there. Then it was July 2021. Jason's family came up to the cabin for the weekend. Saturday afternoon, Kendra walked through the cabin. The cabin Margaret and I built with our own weekends. The cabin where both of my children learned to swim. And she said, the way you'd say it about a stranger's property, this place could be worth a fortune if you sold it. I said I wasn't selling. She nodded and walked back out to the porch. I stood in the doorway of that cabin for a moment. The garden on the east side was coming up the way Margaret had planted it. I didn't say anything else. I was no longer wondering if I was seeing something that wasn't there. April 2022. I was babysitting the grandchildren at Jason and Kendra's house. The kids were in the living room. Kendra was in the kitchen on the phone, and I was in the hallway, and she did not know I could hear her. She was telling someone, I don't know who, that once we inherit the lake place we can finally get ahead. Not if. Once. I went back to the living room and sat on the floor with my grandchildren and read them a book about a bear who loses his hat and then finds it. We read it twice because they asked me to. I did not let my face do anything that would have confused them, but I was thinking, she has built her budget around a property she does not own and cannot have signed over to her without my consent. She has been counting on my generosity the way you'd count on a machine. Not with gratitude, with expectation. There was something I had that she hadn't accounted for. I didn't know yet how I was going to use it, but I kept it in mind. September 2023. A family barbecue at Jason's. Kendra found me by the grill and asked directly if I had updated my estate plan since Margaret died. I told her everything was handled. She pressed. What did handled mean? Was it a will? Had I talked to anyone? I said, it's handled, Kendra. She smiled that efficient smile and went inside. 5 days before Thanksgiving, she mentioned the property transfer conversation on Jason's porch, and then the deed arrived in the mail, unsigned, with her handwritten note. We can do this at Thanksgiving. That was when I picked up the phone and called the attorney. I sat in that office on November 21st, and I need to tell you now what I've been keeping back. The lake property, the 40 acres, the 800 feet of shoreline, the cabin Margaret and I built is not mine to sign away. It has not been mine to sign away since January 2009. That is when Margaret and I established an irrevocable trust. Jason was 25 in 2009. He was making the kinds of decisions 25-year-olds make when they have not yet learned what things cost. Margaret and I made a quiet decision, not punitive, not announced, that the property needed to be protected in a way that couldn't be undone on a bad day or a good pitch. The trust distributes the property to both children equally when I die. My daughter Emily is named successor trustee. A quitclaim deed has no legal effect on trust-held property. None. You can sign a quitclaim deed for a lake property in an irrevocable trust, and what you have produced is a piece of paper. That is all. Kendra had mailed me a piece of paper and asked me to sign it and slide it back to her, and she had done this with complete confidence at my table in front of my grandchildren, because in 9 years of watching me write checks and wash her dishes and not ask for anything back, she had concluded that I would comply. She had concluded wrong. My attorney confirmed the deed was worthless before I drove home and made the cranberry sauce. When she placed it in front of me at Thanksgiving, I knew, with the same certainty I know whether a panel is grounded correctly, exactly what I was looking at. I let her play it out. 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, I was walking a habitat framing site with Dennis Wynn. Dennis is 61. We worked out of the same union hall for 20 years. He brings his lunch in the same blue igloo cooler he's used since 1991. The handle is wrapped in electrical tape, same as my toolbox, because nothing's wrong with it. I told Dennis the full story as we walked the site. He listened. He didn't interrupt. When I finished, he said, "You don't owe anybody an explanation for protecting what you built." That was all he said. Dennis agreed to serve as witness when I returned to my attorney's office to formalize a trust amendment, one that explicitly prohibits any early distribution or transfer to Jason for the duration of my lifetime. Not punitive. Precise. The kind of work you do when you want something to hold. We signed it on a Thursday afternoon. Dennis went home to his family. I went home and had soup. The door was now closed in a way that could not be pried open. Kendra had tried to take something. What she'd actually done was motivate me to make absolutely certain she never could. December 19th, 2023. A diner on Route 9, halfway between my house and theirs. Vinyl booths. Fluorescent lights. Tuesday morning. Not crowded. I arrived first. Ordered coffee. Sat with my hands around the cup. Jason came in 7 minutes late. He sat down across from me and he tried. He said Kendra meant well. He said she was just trying to help with planning. He said, Dad, she's just trying to help us plan ahead. Those words, from my son, in that diner, on a Tuesday morning in December. I listened to all of it. I did not interrupt. When he finished, I reached into my jacket and placed a folder on the table. I slid it across to him. Inside was a copy of the 2009 irrevocable trust document. The date on the cover page. The trustee designations. Emily's name, in black and white, as successor trustee. I said, this is what you didn't know. Jason opened the folder. He read the first page. He read it again. I watched the moment arrive. The moment where a man realizes the thing he sat quietly beside while his wife demanded it at his father's Thanksgiving table was never real. Not legally. Not for 14 years. He realized I knew that before she put it down. He realized I let them show me who they were. I said, you sat there and said nothing while she tried to pressure me in my own house. I let that sit for a moment. You don't get to do that again. I stood up. I put cash on the table for my coffee. I did not wait for a response. I walked out of that diner. What left Jason's face was not anger. It was not argument. It was the expression of a man holding a document that has just explained the last 4 weeks to him and probably the last 9 years, and who understands that no one is coming to take the folder back. Outside it was cold. The kind of December cold that is just cold. No wind, no drama, just cold air doing what it does in December. My truck was parked at the far end of the lot. I walked to it, got in, put my key in the ignition. On the passenger seat was my clipboard from that morning's Habitat walk. I had an electrical inspection to finish, panel work on a build 2 streets over. The kind of thing I've done 10,000 times. The kind of thing where you walk in, you check what needs checking, you sign off or you don't, and the work either holds or it doesn't. I drove there. The frame was clean. The panel was grounded correctly. I made my notes and signed the clipboard and walked back to the truck. I had once walked into my own house and found a life that made sense. For a long time after Margaret died, I wasn't sure I still had that. I thought generosity might be the thing that kept the shape of the family intact. I kept writing the checks. I kept washing the plates. I kept not saying anything about what I noticed. I know the difference now between generosity and surrender. That is not the same thing. That has never been the same thing.